Hello, viewers. So we're talking Loki episode 3 here. Were there any fireworks between Loki and Sylvie? Stay tuned and find. Whoa! What the? Oh! Jeez. Don't play with fire, kids. Now, before we get into this, spoiler alert. Don't say I didn't warn you. Jeez. Okay, so let's dive into episode 3 here. Now, I'm going to be honest, and this might get me a little bit of flack here, but I did think that the majority of this episode was just a tad boring, honestly, which is pretty odd considering that it was an episode with an apocalyptic event. You know, they're running around and they're like dodging these like fireballs from a moon that's collapsing on them and they're beating up people and I was just kind of sitting there like, that's great. Yeah. Can something happen? Maybe that was just me. Let me know in the comments below if I'm the only one who thought that this episode just dragged a little bit too much. It was a bit of a step back, I think, from the first 2 episodes, which were so engaging. I think maybe engaging more intellectually than anything else. But that's kind of just how I felt. Now, that being said, I did think there were 2 parts to this episode that were worth a bit of our attention here. The first one, of course, has to do with Sylvie and things that we learn. Now, I thought the chemistry between Hiddleston and DiMartino was just a little bit off here in some ways. At certain points in the episode, they were trying to build up a kind of playfulness between the two. And you could tell that that's what they were going for. But it always seemed like the 2 actors were just a bit off in terms of their timing, both in terms of their dialogue and even their body language. It seemed to me always like Hiddleston was being a little bit too playful and DiMartino was being a little bit too guarded and too fierce. And again, I understand that this is what they want for the characters, Loki and Sylvie, but I still felt like there were opportunities there to build a better connection between the 2 that just didn't seem to manifest itself as well as I thought it could have, considering that both are quite good. They're very good actors, both of them. However, we did get, I think, enough of a chemistry between the 2 to see how very different they are. And I thought it was interesting to me when Loki and Sylvie were walking together, and Loki says, I need to be able to trust you. I've told you, a lot about me. Why don't you tell me something about you? And I found Sylvie's answer in terms of the varying degrees of how susceptible people are to that enchantment spell that she has. I thought that was really intriguing. The idea that there are varying levels of mind that can resist that enchantment, because I'm always interested in not simply the extent of power, but I love thinking about the limitations and how frustrating that must be for someone like Sylvie when she runs across someone whose mind she can't just very easily enchant. That has to make that individual feel just a tad bit powerless, actually, in that situation. And so her relationship with Loki, the fact that she tries to enchant him but she can't, she opens herself up already to a kind of vulnerability that I think is more vulnerable on her end than even Loki's end, if that makes sense. Now, the second thing that I thought was really, really interesting, and that connects with our running conversation of free will and determinism and how all of this is going to play out in the series, is kind of a very quick, almost throwaway line when Sylvie tells Loki that the people who work at TVA are actually not originals, not created by the Time Lords, but in actuality, they are variants themselves. I find that really fascinating in terms of what that would do, or what that's going to do to, say, someone like Owen Wilson's character, who had this interesting monologue in the second episode about how much he likes jet skis. And there's something about that that makes him unique, makes him very, human, this yearning for something, and yet he almost feels like he's not worthy of having it. Well, what happens to that dream, that yearning, that uniqueness when he finds out that he's actually just a variant? I don't know. How are they going to take it? How would you take it? Would you take it as simply a matter of fact and move on? Would you say, you know what? I still got to take the garbage out, take the kids to school, and go to my job. I don't have time to think about the cosmological ramifications of my variantness. Or would you find yourself actually in a bit of an existential cosmological crisis and start wondering about what it is that you can actually own for yourself? Do I or can I lay claim to my want to be on a jet ski? How much of that is actually me, and what does it mean if I'm a variant who has a dream or a yearning for something? Is there any value in that? I'm really interested to see what they do with this moving forward in the next episode, especially. Okay, so there's not a whole lot for me to say for this review episode, quite honestly. I'm just going to be waiting until the next episode, where I hope we see a little bit more of a tightening up of the chemistry between Hiddleston and DiMartino, and I'd like to learn a little bit more about Sylvie, of course, and I can't wait to see what happens when the TVA people learn that they are variants. Is this going to create a major crisis within them and split them up or not? I'm interested. I want to see what happens.